So thank you for joining the first Global Future Mobility Virtual Conference by Best Events Productions. With here today with me, I have three experts in the field. I have Stéphanie Priou. She's an urban planner based in Madrid. She works in the transport and automotive sectors for over a decade, and she's an internationally recognized expert. She has extensive experience supporting transport authorities, whether on governance of market organization or competition matters. She is notably specialized in new technologies applied to mobility, whether it be shared electric or autonomous vehicles. Also with me, I've got Alan Cheah. He is based in Malaysia. He's the CEO of GoCar Malaysia, an on-demand car-sharing platform with over 400 locations across 7 states in Malaysia. And he's also a CEO at GoEVcharger, an e-mobility operator, EMO, to provide and operate the charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. Last but not least, I've got Mr. Ankit Kumar. He is known as an auto industry veteran, helping over 26 EV and drone companies globally. So he's engaged in multiple roles with foreign and domestic companies. He's very involved in activities such as JVs, M&As for iconic automobile brands from the US, from Italy, from Taiwan, from UK, and also Europe. So today we will be covering with these three experts the roadmap to seamless and sustainable urban mobility. Um, with my first opening notes. So, three of you have very different experiences as you come from different cities, obviously. Despite the differences, most cities share urban mobility opportunities and challenges, some which threaten to slow down, undermine, or even reverse efforts of transition to a sustainable urban transport future. With the economic recession and lack of resources, this is very much now in the limelight. With the current pandemic situation causing a bit of a havoc on the global economy, what would the best ways to identify key policies, actors, funding mechanisms, and trends, as well as barriers, challenges, and ways to overcome them? Ellen, I'll get you my start.
Hi, thanks, Hannes. Looking at the pandemic situation currently, right, I think the key policy actually does not change. The actors, I see that the only thing that might be a bit different would be the funding mechanism and also the trends, right, for the next few months, knowing that user behavior will change, how will people travel again, and how do you create a sustainable ecosystem for the people traveling in Malaysia right now. So speaking from experience, I don't think the key policies ever changed for the government when it comes to transportation. They do want to create a sustainable ecosystem, but then how do you bring all these players together from the private and the public sector? It's always been a barrier for us in the private sector to penetrate the government policy, to change it so that it streamlines our objective and their objective together. Many times we found out after have many forums and many one-on-one chats with the government, it's that's the only part that we are not aligned with each other. Of course, we always say that we want to bring in the technology, we'll bring in the seamless urban mobility, but yet the infrastructure currently in Malaysia is not equipped to deal with the sudden influx of all this tech, right? But we're not even talking about autonomous vehicles, we're just talking about EV charging. As of currently, we are growing in the EV sector, but not fast enough to make an impact to convert any user behavior, how people think about transportation. So the best thing that the private sector that we are doing right now is that we are bringing all the key players together, as in we want to know what the private sector can contribute to the government infrastructure without them investing too much in it. So that's what we have been doing on our side, working with other partners who have provide similar technology as ours, whether it's on demand or whether it's reducing cars on the road. How can I take less? How do I live in a sense that we don't allow more cars to go to the city center and so on and so forth? Everything is still very preliminary, and I as a private player, I always sense the frustration that we feel when it comes to the government policy. But the global pandemic will basically just change the user behavior, which means the funding is affected and also the trends and barriers. But everything else would be almost exactly the same from what I can see. Yeah. Sorry, you're
Okay.
mute. Yeah.
Yes, sorry. I think you're completely right. I think the most important is basically the operations are keeping the same, although there would be some, because of the pandemic, some changes in terms of operations. So everything which is hygiene, cleaning, when you have a shared mobility mode, obviously you have this kind of concerns. But you're right in the sense that procurement doesn't change. Everything is about travel behavior. And I think this crisis is in a way intending to tell us something about mobility, is that we need to review a little bit the way we move. And we know that the main problem in cities as of now is density. And we know that the organization of multimodal transport is very important. So we have this density. We need to try to transport a number of people. So cities are facing very complicated challenges, whether Kuala Lumpur, whether Jakarta, whether Mumbai, any city basically in Asia and in Europe, where I'm based, you know, so we're trying to, have this mass transport, which is basically the backbone of every city, I believe. And then you have all the other modes, which basically bring a different type of service, different quality, different ways of moving, etc., which need to be integrated. And that's where I join you, Alan, in this, that we need to find like a kind of scheme to put everything together, and public-private partnerships, etc. And obviously, like market entrance, because it's very important to know how you enter the market, how you organize the market, how you inform people about what is the mobility on the territory. It's very important. And I think this crisis is very good in this way to try to set again maybe a little bit of a new base, or something that we need to think about, like how do we really want this crisis to impact us. We know that pollution is very important in cities. It has impacted very much the quality of the air that we are breathing as citizens. And that's one externalities. There are many externalities to transport that we need to address. So basically, I think it's a good moment to think about it a little bit more, to integrate everything together and work together, if I can be positive.
Thank you, Stephanie. And what about you, Ankit? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I second Alan and Stephanie on the part where the stakeholders of the entire ecosystem remain same. But look at this from a different angle altogether. I mean, these are unprecedented times. We haven't seen such kind of times, at least in the last 100 years. Now, look at the current mobility system, how it has panned out to be in major cities. Let me tell you, I mean, this is highly congested. It's overcrowded, and this is somehow contributing towards non-productive hours, people spending time on road, etc. And I'm talking about major cities which are generating huge number of incomes. The economies and the social well-being is also taken care of. Now, I'm an optimist, and what I could derive from the COVID-19 pandemic, which goes around, is we need to perhaps come out and do a certain re-engineering around the complete ecosystem, the mobility system which is there today, and make it more safe and sustainable. So today, I mean, if you go back like 150, 200 years back, along with the city architects, the health officials also used to be a part of creating and developing the policies and creating the cities and the complete streetscapes of the cities. Today they are not. It's more or less taken care by the municipal corporations, etc., and they try to work around with officials, and they try to create those cities. Now, I mean, what I'm trying to put down here is we need to rethink on how we invest in cities. Investment will certainly be impacted, but and again, the investment allocation by the government officials needs to be in the right direction, towards creating something which is going to be more sustainable and which is going to be more safe. Transport officials today think more or less about how to ease the commute from A to B. They need to think and take a more holistic approach, thinking about the overall economic and social well-being of the people who are traveling around and who are going around doing things. So yeah, I mean that's something that I can derive from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Ankit. And today's technology changes associated with mobility's second great inflection point, they create myriad opportunities for cities to address these challenges. As ride sharing grows up, digital vehicle connectivity deepens, electric vehicles, EVs, become more mainstream, and autonomous vehicles, AVs, take hold. So it becomes possible to actually envision a future of seamless mobility. In such an environment, the boundaries among the private and the shared and the public transport would be blurred, and travelers would definitely have a variety of cleaner, cheaper, and flexible ways to get from point A to point B. But of course, like what you mentioned earlier, it is in reality a bit far from being seamless because of all the challenges that we're facing. And vehicles that are fully autonomous do not really exist in meaningful numbers. So EVs still make up only a small percentage of the global vehicle fleet, and traditional internal combustion engine cars represent about 40% of passenger kilometers, often more than rail and bus services combined. So, how can public and private sector leaders forge a strategy to make seamless mobility happen, especially in dense, developed cities or developing cities such as London, Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, and Bengaluru? Alan, you may start.
Well, we've been doing this for so long. I really don't know how to answer this anymore. Um, Public and private sector leaders forge a strategy. So we've been drumming a lot about the use cases that we have done, case studies, and the the seamless urban mobility that you mentioned is actually not impossible. We've seen it in cities like Helsinki, in Belgium, and they are making great advancement in terms of the transportation sector. And you notice that for that to happen, the government, the public side must make a very strong enforcement in order to change user behavior. As long as there's nothing that comes out of that, then no matter whatever technology that's provided by the private sector will not be able to execute as fast as we can, right? Even China is already doing it, telling that I don't want motorbikes in cities, and bam, overnight, nothing happens. No bikes you can be seen in the city centers. So for public and private sector to work together, we really must have leaders that that is consistent in their strategy, in their thoughts, in their engagement with the private sectors. Constant feedback going both ways. Then only then we are able to forge a strategy to make seamless mobility happen. But we always know that with the government changes, especially in Malaysia, the policies then get put in the inbox again, and then you go to the junk mail and so on and so forth. And I really don't know, to be fair, how can the public and private sector forge a strategy together? Because it's the conversations and the dialogues that we've been holding. It's just that the enforcement and the execution is not happening. It could be happening behind the scene, but it's not impactful enough to a point where we as the private sector can contribute much in terms of what they have for the Vision 2040 city, and that sort of things. So I think more transparency is needed so the private sector can understand what does the public sector wants from us. Because right now it's a collaborative economy. You can't have one and not the other. And you can't rely on the public sector to do so many things at the same time, right? So you need the private sector to support them. So transparency is clearly needed from the public side so that the private know what they can do, or what has been done, or what else can we do in order to make this into a reality. So that's my thought on the working together part.
And Stephanie?
Well, once again, Alan, I completely agree with you. I think it's indeed, it is indeed a problem of policies and the fact that what you were saying about Finland, which is Helsinki in Finland, sorry, is indeed the mobility as a service. So what we call mobility as a service is basically, if I can make it very simple, is an app that gathers everything together, all the transport modes that you would need, and you would pay a monthly fee, for example, in order to access, I don't know, bikes, e-scooters, car sharing,
Everything.
ride hailing, bus, every single thing that you can think of. And I think this system indeed is supported by policies. This is basically my job. I'm working at policy level in terms of advising new technologies to people who would make, like, I don't know, an electric vehicle strategy at national level, for example. This is one of the projects my company is working on. Anyway, so I agree with you. I think it's a behavioral thing which we need to change. Although, in my urban planner point of view, again, I think there is also one thing we can say. I do believe that we all have to collaborate, etc. But there is one thing that we need to change. This paradigm is the private car, and the private car. We can say whatever we want, but until we won't limit a little bit the use of the private car, nothing else would take up. So that's one very important thing. We can say, like, hey, we try to work together and just have private car lanes, for example, in cities. You have 4, 5, 6, 8 of them, and we try to collaborate with the rest. No. Unfortunately, we would like this to work, but it doesn't. We are in a shared economy now. We try to, to accomplish things all together. And the private car with, I don't know how it is in your area, but in Europe, it's about 1.5 person in all cars in Europe. When you have like 5-seat cars, 7-seat cars, this is something which is crazy. It's like on demand. We see it from the transport side. I see that on demand buses, for example, those small buses that you can have like 10, 15 people inside. It makes sense. You don't need a bus which is like 30 seats. Yep. If you have only 10 of them which are used. So that's the same thing with a private car. And we can try to collaborate with the private car, if I can say so. But what authorities, what the people who are making the laws have to consider is that as long as you won't take drastic measures, which is tolls at the entrance of cities, limitations in terms of license plates, or this kind of things, any matter, there are many things that you can do with the private car. Unfortunately, you won't be able to achieve what you want as a sustainable option of transport. And yeah, that's my take.
And Ankit, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Stephanie has said. To move to a seamless transportation, you need to have multiple things in place. And I'm a firm believer in that we need to coexist with whatever modes of commutation we have. But at the same side, what I was talking about in the first point about re-engineering the entire streetscapes, I think that's an ideal way to go around with. If you look at COVID-19 pandemic, what it has taught us, and if you see around what the changes have happened, then a few pointers that could be derived from it is that people have now focused on active mobility part more. You see the bike sales are spiking up in all the parts of the world today. People are using more time to walking and cycling and doing all this kind of stuff. They have more or less they have tried to reclaim the public space, and they're utilizing the public space for a much better way, in a much better way. What needs to be kept in line is that it has created a sort of a discipline. Even the social distancing part has created a sort of a discipline in how we use the public space. And I believe that, if we do a re-engineering on the streetscapes in a way that some streets are only available for active mobility, which we call as active streets. Some streets are available for shared commute, where you have all types of mode of commutation which is happening. And some streets only has got public transportation as well as active mobility part coming in. You'd often do more car-free days. Now, car-free days is not a new concept, but it has not been implemented at a large level in major cities. Cities somehow, get a backlash from the governments and the policymakers too that, this is not creating a economic, upfront economic increment in terms of this. And if you are going to allow more and more car-free days, it's going to hurt the economy as well. So, we have to increase the number of car-free days that we do take. One of the things that has worked out in Delhi, the capital city of India, is that we created a concept called as odd and even. So on odd day you try odd cars, even day you use even cars. It was very impactful for the first 20 days. But then the people who had odd numbers went and bought even cars, and people who had even numbers went and bought odd cars. So there was no regulations in place. and this became a trouble for people to manage because there were more cars after the odd and even policy. So I mean, right implementation of such policies are very much required, and the regulators need to do a check on that front.
Thanks, Ankit. People will always find a way out, right? They're very
Yeah, of
Yeah.
sneaky.
course.
Okay, so cities can enhance supply the traditional and expensive way by building more roads, more bridges, more rail lines, and other infrastructure. But they can also do so by using existing vessels, existing assets more intensively. Ankit, I'll start with you. What are some tools they can deploy to do this better, to use existing infrastructure?
Okay, so I mean, again, I've been advocating a lot around re-engineering the entire ecosystem, what I believe is there are two assets to it. One is that you have to involve health officials, health planners to be in place when they are going to utilize the current infrastructure which is there. The current infrastructure needs to be well designated. Now, one of the cities that I love and has done it beautifully is Netherlands in Amsterdam. Largely, it has become the like the bicycle active mobility capital of the world per se. And I think all across Europe, most of the cities are now following the similar kind of activities. It is not done overnight. They had a limited area. They started utilizing that in a more efficient way. Similarly, if you look at UK today, I was reading around that they are trying to arrange the streets in a way that it's more available for the active mobility people for cycling and walking, etc. And those are the things that you need to do. So I mean, you have to utilize the spaces that you have. You don't have to create more and more flyovers and etc. All you have to do is you have to rearrange the things that has already been working, involve more health officials to also organize places where you have hygiene and sanitation, etc., being worked out in a much better way. Because you go through these places, you don't realize, but there are a lot of germs, virus, bacteria, etc., that gets over. One of the things that needs to be taken care into shared mobility space is one vehicle is going to be utilized by multiple people. So how do you ensure that the person before me was not impacted by, was not ill, and it is not going to impact me. So that's a big responsibility that falls on the shared mobility platform players, and that's something that needs to be reworked and seen that how it goes through progress.
Okay, what about you, Stephanie? How is it done in Madrid or Europe in general?
Well, that's a good take, but I think in Europe, but also in India, I know India are doing a lot of efforts in this respect, and I think it's very interesting to see the developments in the world. But basically, in Europe, there are many things which are happening. If you think about it, everything which is car oriented, which is our cities in Europe since I think after the Second War, so the 50s more or less, has been like everything is bridges and very big highways, etc. So only the fact of building things for cars is very expensive for the society. And I think we have spent like the past 50 or more years to do so. And now we need to think about how we want to reorganize, especially, I mean, I'm not speaking between cities, but maybe in urban areas. Obviously, we need to think how we allocate the space, as Ankit was saying. And the allocation of space is very important because in terms of well-being of people, we do know having like a lot of places to live, especially in dense cities. We're living in even denser cities. We know that 70% of the population in 2050 is going to live in urban areas. This is a lot of people to take care of. We need trees, we need green spaces for our children to play. And we can't make the most of it if we have, I don't know, streets in the middle with, I don't know, buses, cars, etc. So we need to organize a little bit the cities, which is what Europe has been focusing on. In my city, in Madrid especially, it's still very much car-based. Unfortunately, we're seeing a change with the pandemic, with especially a little bit more ride-hailing, etc., or private cars coming back and bikes, and a lot of people walking as well, which I have to say I'm very happy about. But still, we need very much policies for this. Everything is policies. But in terms of the organization of cities, we just need to work around everything which has been made before for one single use, which was the car. I'm not saying, I know I may look, but I mean, if you see that 70-80% of our cities are made for cars, maybe we should just lessen a little bit this number and just try to plan for different things and organize our mobility in a different way.
Thanks, Stephanie. And Alan, obviously our jungle city, Kuala Lumpur, is super duper congested. But with GoCar, I'm sure you have some solutions in hand. So what are your thoughts?
Well, basically what Ankit and Stephanie have mentioned, right, is the re-engineering of the cities. And from what I can see, and Stephanie is spot on when we say that this entire city, KL especially, right, is built for cars. It's not pedestrian friendly. It's not for people to walk. Nothing like it. That's why we're always building overhead bridges, which is all wrong, right? We're supposed to make it, pedestrian friendly. And the more pedestrian friendly it becomes, then people will stop driving from one building to another building. They will just walk across, which means then you reduce the demand for cars inside the city center. And existing infrastructure right now, like what GoCar is doing or trying to push for it to happen, is that we place GoCars across the city centers, which means that you can take the car from point A to point B. So that means you either take public transportation into the city, you start walking around, and if the distance is too great, then you take a GoCar and go to the second location and just drop the car there. So those are one of the very few things that we are doing right now to encourage people to be back on the road for walking or whether biking. And just now Ankit is talking about bikes being oversold in certain countries, and Malaysians are very lazy people. The moment they go to the city, they only want to walk in air conditioned roads. So it's very strange when I go traveling around the world and I go like, wow, I'm so proud of myself. I can walk one street to another street and I'm not even tired. And then I just realized in Malaysia, because I don't walk hardly, everything is underground. Oh, sorry, on in the shopping mall, or I take Grab or things like that, or I drive my own go-kart. So the whatever we do in basically leveraging on existing infrastructure is to turn the space that we have in the cities now to be more pedestrian friendly. I know, enlarge the walkways, stop building overhead bridges, create more crossing. Cars are not supposed to drive that fast in city centers anyway, right? Existing car parks, give it to the sharing economy. Don't let people drive so many cars into the city center. So those car parks can be used for better usage, like putting for car sharing or Grab or bikes or anything like that. So that's how I can see we can start changing user behavior by enforcing all these policies in place, right? Which is back to Stephanie's plate again, changing policies. Yeah. And I'm not telling them to build more things. I'm just telling them to build less and then, leverage on existing infrastructure, make it more pedestrian friendly again. So people will actually still cycle from bank A to bank B, right? Now I don't even dare to step on the pedestrian walk because I don't know whether the motorbikes will bang me down when I'm on the bike, right? Yeah. So and I get angry pedestrians scolding me every time I ride past them. So that's a very bad deterrent for me to become, sustainable in my own city.
Okay, when we're talking about policies, perhaps the public sector, they might need some help because especially in Malaysia, smart cities, we've been talking about it for a few years, how to make it more pedestrian friendly. We have our car-free weekends and all that. But encouraging people to shift to a widening array of shared transportation, which we see every year with there are companies coming in and creating new companies like this. Moving from traffic to off-peak hours are also critical pieces of the puzzle. If people move away from driving themselves, like what you mentioned, and using more rail, more bus, more autonomous shuttles, which I hope will be in the near future, existing infrastructure can carry more passengers. So without increasing the congestion, right? What recommended for demand optimization tools would you recommend for these policymakers to understand how to plan the city better?
Who's going first? Or the policymaker? Stephanie, you want to go first?
Well, yeah, I'm not very sure I understood everything about the question. You were saying about on demand, especially, or did you?
How do the city planners, for example, understand, or what tools can they use to understand traffic flows, how to organize traffic better, and in that sense?
Okay, sorry. This relates basically to traffic management. Yeah. What we can see, I mean, I'm very fond of new technologies. However, we need to take them, in a good way and use them in a, not in every single context. But in terms of traffic management, what is really good is that democratization, for example, of cameras, CCTV, etc., is supporting very much traffic management in cities, which is like giving priorities to certain modes or stopping some areas to work, etc., in order for others, and to facilitate like peak off-peak traffic, etc. So I think this is definitely supporting policies in this respect. And yeah, sorry, I got a bit lost with your question, to be honest.
Okay. That's all right. What about Ankit? Would you like to suggest what kind of tools can help city planners better plan the cities?
See, ultimately, I think that the answer to your question lies in the solution and the concept of connected cities. So when we talk about connected cities, we are talking about connecting each and every digital equipment which is installed in the city, and deriving data and building on that data. And that's huge tons of data that we're talking about that goes to the public-private partnership owners, shared mobility companies, public transportation companies, and this exchange of free flow of data between the cities, between the equipments which are installed, as well as the public transportations and the private players, is going to help around in optimizing the better usage of the infrastructure as well. So today, if you look at, I mean, if I want to drive from A to B, I'm only looking at driving today as a Gen Z kind of a person, because today accessibility is not there. If you come to major cities in India, the largest challenge was accessibility, which in 1980s gave birth to two-wheelers. So India is the largest consumers of two-wheelers, motorcycles, and scooters. We sell around 21 million two-wheelers in a year. That's huge. And our roads are like 70% occupied by two-wheelers. So that's the number that we're talking about. And that came because there was no accessibility from public transportation. Public transportation didn't take off in a much better way in India because there was no planning which was done. Now people are trying to re-engineer and plan across cities like Bengaluru, cities like Hyderabad are trying to work around and see things, but it's again a mess. And the more we move towards the smart city concept, it's only possible when once you have more data and the entire thing is connected together, so that you can optimize and you can better use the spaces that you have.
Thank you, Ankit. Alan, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so mine is again in combination of both Ankit and Stephanie. When Stephanie talked about first is the mobility as a service, and then Ankit is talking about data, right? And how do you have a free flow of data going from the public to the private sectors? I've seen this being implemented in Hangzhou when Alibaba they created then I can't remember the software name, but it's basically a brain that monitors the entire traffic movement in the entire city of Hangzhou, right? Whether it's traffic light, whether that the road's congested, things going in and out, and then how do you take those data and then translate it and give it to the public and private sectors so that you're telling people, okay, stop riding into that part of the city, and the public buses would then increase the commute between these two areas and that sort of things, right? So which means that you need the data to free flow, and then you have the mobility as a service where you can distribute all this data so that the sharing economy knows what to do with it. So, and data is always the most important thing we look into when we are planning our journey, our roads, and everything, the infrastructure, which again, the transparency is needed between the public and private sector, because right now it's nobody trusts anyone with their own data. And then you have all the privacy issues. So like I say, it's really a big bowl of mess that we're looking into in order just to change the infrastructure and changing user behavior. But the key point has been brought up by Stephanie and Ankit anyway, right? It's the data movement free flowing, and also then how does it connect to the entire private and public sector both ways? Yeah, that's all to it.
Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Ankit. So this will wrap up our session for today. We will also welcome questions if you have. You can always message us or message our speakers here today. We will be sharing their contact details later. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next session.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Kate. Bye, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Bye, Hannes.
Bye.